A lot of the time when I review something on this channel, it's usually something with at least a little bit of significance. Whether it's something I actually use, or something I think is interesting, or something that was pretty powerful and neat for its time. Not today. This is the HP Pavilion a6300f, a PC from 2007 that is very boring. So why am I even bothering with it? I don't know. The A6000 line of Pavilions was HP's line of primary consumer desktops that they sold in the late 2000s during the Windows Vista era. That is what this PC is. This is a late 2007 model Pavilion. I don't know a whole lot about this computer. Finding any information is tough, so I don't really know how much it cost, but I looked on HP's website from the time, and here's what I found. I got this computer for free about a year ago, and I haven't really done a whole lot with it. But I thought maybe I'd finally do some stuff with it today by doing a review on it. This PC would have shipped with a Pentium dual-core E2180, along with 2 gigs of RAM, a 500GB hard drive, a DVD burner, NVIDIA GeForce 7100 graphics, and Windows Vista. I upgraded it to 4GB of memory, I added in an NVIDIA GeForce 8500 GT, and worst of them all, I upgraded this thing to Windows 10, but we'll get to that later. For now, let's go ahead and see what this PC has to offer on its case. Starting at the front of the PC, actually on the top, is the power button. HP marks this as a way of convenience by putting the power button on the top of the computer. I know it's not everybody's thing, but personally, as somebody who keeps their computer down under their desk, I actually quite like this. Also in the button is the LED, power LED, and in this computer's case it's a multicolor LED, meaning that when the computer is on, the LED will be blue, and when the computer is in standby, the LED will turn amber. I love this. It is so much less annoying than a pulsing LED like what most computers do. Obviously it's more complicated. It means that trying to switch boards is a bit weird, but still, I like this. Also, right next to it, although it's a bit hard to tell, is the hard drive LED, which, as typical for HP computers of this time, is quite dim and can be quite difficult to see depending on the angle you're at. Below that, we have a built-in card reader. This is a 15-in-1 card reader that can do Smart Media, SD and MMC, Compact Flash Type 1 and Type 2, and Memory Stick, among other formats. A lot of PCs from the day had these, and it's quite a nice feature. Underneath that, we have the LightScribe DVD drive that is original to this computer, along with the expansion bay, which has never been populated on this machine and still has a blank. Underneath that, we have an HP Pocket Media drive bay, which is kind of an interesting thing from the time. I don't know a whole lot about this. I haven't seen this too much before. From what I can gather, it's a drive expansion thing that HP sold at the time. It's just a USB expansion, and you can put that in this computer and have it be internal. It's just an internal USB Type B connection. It's pretty neat, honestly. The only thing about it is that if you wanted to add like a floppy drive or something into this computer, for example, you'd probably have to take this out because it's populating the only other bay accessible to this thing. And it also uses a custom bezel, so if you take this out and put in something like a floppy drive, well, it would look kind of strange. Underneath that, we have the I/O, conveniently hidden by this door. We have a 1394 FireWire port on the front, along with 2 USB 2.0 ports, and a headphone and microphone jack. And to the left of that, we have spaces for video imports. The cutouts are there, however, they are not equipped on this model. More than likely, they would have only been equipped on the higher-end Media Center line of Pavilion, since they all use the same chassis, basically. Below that, we have the HP Pavilion logos, as well as the Windows Vista sticker, the Pentium dual-core Inside sticker, and the Graphics by NVIDIA sticker. And we also have some ventilation underneath that, so this thing can take in some intake. On the side of the computer, we have more ventilation, more intake vents. And on the other side, we have the Windows Vista COA, as well as the info sticker, and the product advertisement sticker that HP did on all of their things. And there's also some ventilation underneath that for the hard drive. On the back of the computer, we have the power supply, including a diagnostic LED for indicating when it's failed, as well as a built-in modem, and the aforementioned NVIDIA GPU, which has S-Video, VGA, and DVI. Again, something I added into this computer, though, it did not come with it. And we have the I/O, including surround sound audio, 4 more USB 2.0 ports, 10100 Ethernet, another 1394 FireWire port, which is nice to have, PS2 keyboard and mouse ports, digital audio in and out ports, and VGA and DVI, something you actually don't quite see that often on internal motherboards, but because this has a dedicated graphics chipset, that's why. And it has a 92mm case fan, and some power, voltage, whatever information. Externally, the chassis itself is fine. I wouldn't really say it's overly amazing. It's quite light for its day. It leans to the left because that's where all the weight in the case is. But otherwise, I'd say it's fine. The only thing I really can complain about is that it has a glossy black plastic front panel on it. Everybody was doing that, so I guess you can't really fault HP for that. Something else that's a bit interesting about this case, if you haven't already been able to notice, is that this is the HP that started the trend of inverted ATX, meaning the side panel comes off on the left side instead of the traditional right side, and the motherboard layout is flipped. Now once we open the computer, the first immediate thing, as you might be able to tell, is the gigantic wire spaghetti. This is a Bestech ATX 250-12Z. Remember that? HP did, because they were still using it in 2007. For those who don't know, this is an infamous power supply that they used for the most part in the early and mid 2000s. My guess is HP probably had old stock laying around and they wanted to use, so I guess it's okay. It's not my first choice of power supply. It's not the 12E power supply that is known for blowing up. There's a big difference between those two. This power supply, as far as I'm aware, is fine, though I still wouldn't recommend it. It also means this computer uses a 20-pin power supply on a 24-pin motherboard, which works, I guess. It's just not really that great. And because this power supply is so old, it doesn't have a single SATA power connector on it, meaning HP out of the box had to use Molex to SATA power adapters, which is a bit funny, but I mean, I guess it works again. Next to that, we have the optical drive bay, which are conveniently held in with these pretty sturdy metal tabs that mean you don't have to put any screws in it, which I always appreciate. We can remove the front panel by using these tabs on the front, as typical for HP computers of this day, so that we can take the optical drive out of this computer. You can also see the cutouts for all of the I/O that could have been on this chassis. The optical drive in this computer was manufactured by Hitachi LG. It's fine. It's not the greatest drive I've ever seen. It's quite old, obviously. It has issues writing disks, more so than reading. When I burned the recovery disks for this computer, I ended up having to replace it temporarily because it just could not write a disk. So it's fine. I mean, it works, kind of, I guess. I don't have a replacement, so I've just left it in this computer. At least HP had the decency of using a SATA optical drive. I will give them that. Next, we have the hard drive cage. As you might be able to notice, I've pre-wired this thing to have an extra SATA port using another adapter. And I have another SATA cable in this because I'm considering adding in a small SSD in addition to the hard drive, but again, that's future plans when I get SSDs for all my things. Anyways, the hard drive cage is removed by these two screws on the front, and then there is a release that you press down, and the drive cage comes out. The hard drive in this computer is a Hitachi Desk Star from 2007. As mentioned earlier, it is a 500GB, 1700 RPM SATA 2 hard drive. It's, again, like the optical drive, it's fine. This drive has quite a few hours on it, but it still works, and I don't really have a definitive replacement, so I left it in this computer. As for the motherboard in this machine, it's kind of a weird one. As you can see, it's actually not long enough to fill an entire Micro ATX form factor. There are some standoffs that are not being used on this case, which is weird. What this also means is that this motherboard only has 2 RAM slots instead of 4. Kind of a shame, but whatever. I've upgraded it again to 4GB of RAM with two 2GB DDR2 667 MHz sticks, which is pretty much the most that this computer can support. Next to that, we have an IDE port, which is pretty nice, along with the 24-pin power port, the CMOS battery, which still works on this computer. We have the heatsink for the NVIDIA MCP73 chipset. That's right, this thing is an NVIDIA Enforce board. And we have the heatsink for the Pentium dual-core E2180. This thing could probably take a Core 2 Duo, but to be honest, I just don't really care to put one in here, because it's not really worth my time. The Pentium is fine, for this computer. We also have the PCI X16 slot where my NVIDIA GPU currently is sitting, along with 2 more PCI Express X1 slots, and a PCI slot where the modem is currently sitting. We also have 4 SATA ports, along with a floppy drive port, again pretty nice for the time, as well as all of the front panel I/O connections above that, which I'm not even going to point out because there is so many of them. And the elephant in the room with this board, which is it does have a single bulging capacitor on it, which doesn't look overly pretty. This is a bit surprising because this PC is very late to be affected by the capacitor plague, but capacitors can fail for whatever reason. It's not uncommon. Anything can technically have failing capacitors. I'm not sure if I'll fix it because, like I said, I just don't really care about this computer that much. I haven't spent any money on it, but it is there, and it is unfortunate, but oh well. And that's about all this thing really has to offer inside. It's quite a basic configuration. Again, it works, I guess. Oh yeah, on the bottom of the PC we also have some more serial information and the spots where the rubber feet used to be. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and close the case up and fire the machine up. It feels kind of weird going back to my monitor after using the capture card to record the last few of these, but I couldn't get my VGA adapter to work with this computer, so we gotta work with this. But otherwise, here's the Phoenix Award BIOS setup, as typical for the time. The settings are as you'd expect. There are language settings, the floppy drive settings, so it's really nice that this whole system just supports floppy drive. It's kind of convenient. You can see the Hitachi hard drive and the Hitachi DVD drive. Underneath that, we can see the information about the RAM. Again, 4 gigabytes, 2 gigabytes per slot. The BIOS is version 5.05 from November of 2007, so more than likely original. And we have the product information underneath that. On the advanced tab, we can see the Pentium dual-core E2180, 2 GHz CPU with an 800 MHz bus speed and 1 megabyte of L2 cache. We can change our video adapter settings, our PS2 mouse settings, enable or disable the IDE controller, the SATA controller, change the SATA controller mode, which rather unfortunately is stuck on IDE because the original install of Windows was shipped that way, enable or disable the onboard Ethernet, enable or disable the boot ROM, enable the FireWire, and set password settings and the audio settings. Rather annoyingly, this computer doesn't have any kind of thermal monitoring in the BIOS. This was a typical thing that HP's had, but on this computer, that feature is absent. We also have the AC power failure settings, along with the execute disable settings. And we have the boot menu, and, well, the screen to exit. So, it's fine for features. I mean, it's pretty typical for a pre-built. Now, the other thing about this BIOS that's a bit interesting, you might be able to notice, is it can be quite laggy, to be honest. It's mostly to do with the hard drive, which I'm wondering if maybe is causing some issues with this BIOS, because it's quite laggy when it hits the hard drive, and after that, it's fine. So, kind of weird, I guess. Anyways, this PC also has built-in diagnostics, powered by PC Doctor. This was a new thing that HP started doing at the time. They've been doing this ever since on their computers. It's a handy feature to have. It's pretty basic at this time. It only does CPU, memory, and disk drives, and in this case, it's full tests, so the memory test can take quite a long time. There's no option to do a quick test. You just have to skip it. And this PC also has system recovery built in. However, that is broken on this computer because I upgraded its original install of Windows, like I said earlier, so the just doesn't do anything. I made the discs for this computer though. They're actually on the Internet Archive if you're curious, so I have all the media for it, so it's fine. Anyways, let's go ahead and boot into the operating system, which is, again, a story on its own. This is Windows 10 that was upgraded from its original install of Windows Vista. Now, the reason I did that was actually a failed video from last year, basically where this was the original trying Windows 10 on an old computer. I was going to upgrade this thing to the most current version of Windows that I could and try and see how usable it was with the original specs. Now, I upgraded it from Vista to 7 and then from 7 to 10. Now, the upgrade from Windows Vista to 7 was fine. However, to make a very long story very short, when I tried upgrading this thing to Windows 10, it just didn't work. Like, it would do most of it, and then it would get to the second part of setup, and it would just fail every time. And I tried everything I could, and nothing was making a difference. I spent so long trying to make this work. It would just blue screen, and then it would just roll back the installation. It was very annoying, let's put it that way, especially because I wasn't here for most of it. It just restarted immediately, so I couldn't tell what exactly was failing. So what I had to do was I actually had to take the hard drive out of this computer and put it into a completely different system and upgrade it on there, which was not fun, but amazingly, that actually made it work. The conclusion I took away from that was that this computer is a piece of trash. If I remember correctly, it was an issue to do with the NVIDIA Enforce drivers was trying to carry over, so I had to basically nuke all of the drivers on this thing, but as you can see, here it is now, it works. The reason, by the way, why that NVIDIA card is in here is because this is what the UI looks like with the original graphics. That's right, the DirectX 9, which doesn't work on Windows 10 properly. So I had to put in the 8500 GT because it's DirectX 10. Anyways, maybe that video will see the light of day, I don't know, but for now, here's Windows 10 running on this old computer. To be honest, it wasn't worth it, and I wouldn't recommend it. If you're gonna do this, do a clean install. It's not worth it at all, but I have the install now, so I figured I might as well use it. It's really not ideal because this is only a 32-bit install. That's right, HP shipped this out of the box with 32-bit Windows. Very annoying, but that's what everybody did at the time, I guess. This also means that this computer can't use all of the RAM, can only use 3 gigs of RAM. Still better than the 2 gigabytes it had out of the box, I guess. As far as resource usage goes, it's obviously not amazing. Most of it problem seems to be this hard drive, which, again, isn't too bad. It's not the slowest thing I've ever seen. It's not fast, though. Like I said, I've thought about putting a cheap SSD in this when I eventually upgrade all of my stuff to SSDs, if I'm going to leave this install on here, that is. As far as software that came pre-installed with this thing, we have Adobe Reader 8, as typical for most things of the time, specifically Adobe Reader 8.1.0 from 2007. We also have a Cyberlink DVD suite on this machine for creating various different kinds of DVDs. Again, fairly standard for the time. This is Cyberlink DVD Suite version 5. We also have the HP Game Console by Wild Tangent, which is something HP was doing at the time. This thing came with a ton of basic games on here, all of which probably expired like 15 years ago. We also have HP PhotoSmart Essential, which was advertised on the side of the case. This is a software basically for just viewing and managing photos. We also have this HP Advisor program, which allows you to do basic tasks with your computer, and it also has this Yahoo search thing, which is why there's that search bar in the taskbar, which has definitely gotten a little broken since upgrading to Windows 10. We also have the LightScribe software, Microsoft Works 9, the last proper version of Works, this movie software, which allows you to make home movies, the HP games that are pre-installed on this that I forgot to remove, everybody's favorite Norton Internet Security 2007, which is actually a fun story on its own because this program, as you can tell, hates Windows 10. It does not work at all. I should have removed it before I did this. I wasn't thinking. It does not work at all. What's even better is that after I was able to get this thing set up and get it to stop blue screening, it was blue screening every time I tried to log in on this file srtsp.sys. Every time, whenever I tried to boot the computer in anything other than safe mode, it wouldn't boot. This file is the Symantec Real-Time Storage Protection Driver. Wonder where that's from? Because I didn't uninstall this before, and I couldn't uninstall it because the uninstaller broke, I had to delete this file before the computer would boot up again. Very annoying. Again, I should have uninstalled this. It's completely useless on this computer. So yeah, that's about all the time Norton deserves. We also have a ton of various online services that came equipped with this PC due to its modem, including Earthlink Total Access, Juno, MSN Explorer, which is hilarious to see on Windows 10, NetZero, and everyone's favorite AOL, which unfortunately didn't install on this computer, probably because it's just flat out incompatible with this operating system. We also have the HP support information, which has obviously various information about your computer in case you need to get on the phone with support. We also have diagnostics from PC Doctor, which hilariously, Windows actually blocks you from opening, which I gotta admit is really funny. It's the same for the HP Recovery Manager. It just doesn't work, probably because it's far too incompatible with this operating system. Again, all of this I already have the discs for, so it's not like it matters. I think it's funny more than anything else. And we have some Snapfish photo software, and all of the user guides that came preloaded with this computer. Now, as far as programs I installed, obviously I installed Firefox on this machine, so it has a modern internet browser. Web browsing on this computer is fine. I mean, if you have nothing else, it works, but it's definitely not fast. I think once again, a lot of the problem isn't even the processor, it's mainly the hard drive just trying to keep up with this. It probably still would be better with a better processor, but again, we're not gonna know. It also has image burn on it for testing that optical drive. As I mentioned earlier, the optical drive in this computer, when it works fine. It's rated for 16x speeds for reading and writing a DVD, and for the most part, yeah, it achieves that speeds. Again, depending on the media. It's more so, like I said, the writing, which this drive struggles with, probably due to a dirty laser, but I'd have to pull the drive apart to see exactly what I could do to try and fix it. But I'd say it's fine. This is around the time when optical drives kind of slowed down anyway in advancement, so you know, you could get away with using an old drive. It's fairly capable by today's standards. And similarly, it's rated for 40x read and write for CDs. While verifying a disk, it achieved just about 20 something x. Not really a scientific test, but oh well, sorry. It also has an old copy of Microsoft Office 2007, everybody's favorite version of Office. We also have Windows Essentials 2011 on this computer. Oh, and yeah, there's also Steam on this machine. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because this isn't a gaming computer. It was never advertised as a gaming computer when it was new. It doesn't have the hardware to do that. But I was very curious since I added in that GPU just to see how it would do with a couple of my XP era games. And yeah, this computer can run games, so you could make it into a gaming computer. Obviously, this was never the most amazing GPU, and again, the CPU was far from the best of the time, but hey, I mean, if you're desperate, this computer can do it, so fair enough, I guess. Otherwise, that hard drive, like I said earlier, has just a few hours on it. I gotta give it to this drive. The fact it's managed to last 50,000 hours and is still working without any signs of failure so far, that's pretty impressive. It isn't the fastest drive in the world, obviously. An SSD probably would blow it out of the water, but at least for this computer, it's fine. The only other quirk about this Windows install is there were obviously several preloaded wallpapers that came, well, with this computer. Fortunately, HP had the decency to have them in a ton of different resolutions so that they suit your monitor depending on, well, your resolution, which is pretty nice. And they're pretty nice wallpapers too. I quite like HP wallpapers in general. I have this Splash one, which I think is the nicest. Otherwise, I think that's about it for this computer. Like I said, there's not really a whole lot amazing about it, but to be honest, you know, at the time, when this computer was new, it really wouldn't have been that bad. I mean, for what it's worth, this is a new computer that could at least run Vista, had the hardware to do it. Vista was still very new, obviously, in November of 2007. A lot of computers couldn't do that, so you wanted a computer to run the newest version of Windows? Well, here you go. That's what it is. And I mean, with my upgrades, this is a pretty good computer as is. There's not really a whole lot else I would change to it, other than, like I said, adding an SSD to it. And hey, it's fun to have a bit of variety on the channel, reviewing some of the more quote-unquote boring things.